Cancer. One word. 3 syllables. That was all my doctor had to say to turn an ordinary day into the worst nightmare of my life. I was there for a routine checkup. 5 minutes later, reality had imploded. What would you do if you were told that the time you thought you had was simply over? The morning of October 12th started like any other Tuesday in Portland, Oregon. I remember the rain pattering against my bedroom window, that familiar Pacific Northwest drizzle that had become the soundtrack of my life. I was 34 years old, a graphic designer with a small apartment in the Pearl District, a rescue dog named Bailey, and what I thought was a simple, uncomplicated life. I made my coffee, dark roast, no sugar, and sat by the window watching the city wake up. The Space Needle replica coffee mug felt warm in my hands. Bailey rested his golden head on my knee, his brown eyes looking up at me with that unconditional love only dogs can give. I scratched behind his ears and smiled. It was supposed to be just another day, just another appointment, just routine follow-up results. The appointment was at 2:30 p.m. at the Oregon Health and Science University. Dr. Patricia Morrison, my oncologist, though I didn't really think of her that way yet. To me, she was just the specialist my regular doctor had referred me to after some irregular test results. Irregular. That word had bounced around in my head for 3 weeks. Irregular, not alarming, not dangerous, just irregular. I had convinced myself it was nothing. I was young. I exercised 3 times a week. I ate relatively healthy. I didn't smoke. Cancer was something that happened to other people, older people, people with family histories, people who lived differently than I did. Not me. Never me. The medical building smelled like antiseptic and something else I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe, or hope. The waiting room was painted in muted blues and grays, probably meant to be calming, but it only made everything feel more surreal, like I was underwater. There were 6 other people waiting. An elderly man with a cane, a young woman maybe in her 20s holding her mother's hand, a middle-aged couple sitting in silence staring at different walls. I checked in at the reception desk. The woman behind the counter smiled at me, one of those practiced, professional smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd seen too many people like me sitting where I sat waiting for news that would change everything. "Dr. Morrison will be with you shortly, Mr. Jackson," she said, handing me a clipboard. Just a few routine forms. Routine. There was that word again. I filled out the forms with shaking hands, though I didn't understand why I was shaking. My heart was pounding in my chest like it was trying to escape. My palms were sweating. I kept telling myself to calm down, that this was nothing, that I was overreacting. But my body knew something my mind was refusing to accept. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. I counted the tiles on the ceiling, 224. I memorized the motivational posters on the walls. "Hope is the thing with feathers," one read, with a picture of a sunrise. Another said, "Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you thought you couldn't." The words felt hollow, like they were meant for someone else, someone actually facing something real. Ryan Jackson? A nurse appeared in the doorway. She was young, with kind eyes and brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Dr. Morrison is ready for you." My legs felt like lead as I stood up. The walk down that hallway to her office felt like the longest journey of my life. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My sneakers squeaked on the linoleum floor. Every step took me closer to a truth I wasn't ready to face. The nurse's small talk felt distant, like she was speaking to me from the other end of a tunnel. "How's the weather treating you?" she asked cheerfully. "Crazy rain we've been having, right?" I mumbled something in response. I don't even remember what. She led me to a small consultation room. Not an exam room, I noticed. Just a room with a desk, some chairs, a box of tissues on the side table. That box of tissues made my stomach drop. Why would there be tissues in a consultation room unless the doctor expected people to cry? "Dr. Morrison will be right in," the nurse said, closing the door behind her. I sat down in the chair facing the desk and stared at the diplomas on the wall. Medical school at Johns Hopkins. Residency at Massachusetts General Hospital. Fellowships in hematology and oncology. Dr. Patricia Morrison was clearly accomplished. I took some strange comfort in that. If the news was bad, and I was starting to suspect it might be, at least I was in good hands. The seconds ticked by on the clock above the door. Each tick felt like a hammer striking an anvil. Tick, tick, tick. My whole life divided into before and after, and the dividing line was approaching fast. The door opened, and Dr. Morrison walked in. She was in her late 50s with silver hair cut short and glasses perched on her nose. She carried a manila folder, my folder, I realized, with my name on it. She sat down across from me and placed the folder on the desk between us. "Ryan," she said, and something in her voice made my blood run cold. It wasn't the cheerful, dismissive tone doctors use when they're about to tell you everything's fine. It was gentle, careful, the tone you use when you're about to break something fragile. "Thank you for coming in today," she continued. "I wanted to discuss your test results with you in person." My mouth went dry. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Dr. Morrison opened the folder and looked at the papers inside, but I got the sense she wasn't really reading them. She already knew what they said. She was just giving herself a moment before she said the words that would shatter my world. "Ryan, the biopsy results came back," she said, looking up at me. Her eyes were kind but serious. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have cancer. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma, to be specific. Stage 3, the room tilted. Those 6 words, you have cancer. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma, hit me like a physical blow. The air left my lungs. The walls seemed to close in. Everything went fuzzy around the edges, like I was looking through a camera lens that wouldn't focus. Cancer, I have cancer." Dr. Morrison was still talking, but I couldn't hear her. Her lips were moving, but the words sounded like they were coming from underwater. Something about treatment options, something about prognosis, something about staging and lymph nodes and chemotherapy, but all I could hear was the screaming in my own head. "You're going to die. You have cancer. You're going to die." Part 5. The emotional storm. I don't know how long I sat there in shock. It could have been seconds or minutes. Time had lost all meaning. Dr. Morrison had stopped talking and was watching me with patient, knowing eyes. She'd done this before. She knew what was happening in my head. "I know this is overwhelming," she said softly. "Take your time." "Take my time?" "Take my time for what?" "To process that my life was over. That everything I'd planned, everything I'd hoped for, was now in jeopardy." The first emotion that broke through the shock was denial. "Are you sure?" I heard myself asking. My voice sounded strange, distant. Could the test be wrong? Maybe it's someone else's results. Maybe. "I'm sure, Ryan," Dr. Morrison said gently but firmly. "We ran the test twice to confirm." "I wish I had different news for you." Denial crumbled into anger. Why me? What did I do to deserve this? I took care of myself. I was young. I had my whole life ahead of me. This wasn't fair. This wasn't right. I felt a surge of rage so powerful it made my hands shake. I wanted to flip the desk. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear down those stupid motivational posters in the waiting room, but I just sat there, frozen as the anger burned through me and transformed into something else. Fear. Raw, primal, all-consuming fear. I was afraid of dying, afraid of pain, afraid of losing everything I loved, afraid of treatment, afraid of not being able to afford treatment, afraid of what people would think, afraid of becoming a burden, afraid of being weak, afraid of fighting, afraid of giving up. The fear was so intense it made me physically nauseous. My hands gripped the armrests of the chair. I could feel sweat beading on my forehead. "I can't do this," I whispered. "I can't. I'm not strong enough for this." Dr. Morrison leaned forward slightly. "Ryan, I know you're scared. That's completely normal. What you're feeling right now, all of it, is valid. But I need you to listen to me." I looked up at her, my vision blurred with tears I didn't even realize I was crying. "Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is serious," she said, "but it's also highly treatable. Stage 3 means the cancer has spread, yes, but we have excellent treatment protocols. We've caught this before it's stage 4. You're young. You're otherwise healthy. Those are advantages." Advantages? How could anything about this be an advantage? But something in her voice cut through the panic. She wasn't giving me false hope. She was giving me facts. And facts were something I could hold on to when everything else was spinning out of control. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Now we fight," she said simply. "We'll start with chemotherapy, a regimen called R-CHOP. It's the gold standard for your type of lymphoma. 6 cycles, 3 weeks apart. It won't be easy. There will be side effects, fatigue, nausea, hair loss. But the success rate is good. Very good." She pulled out some printed materials and started walking me through the treatment plan. Port placement, infusion schedules, support resources, anti-nausea medications. The information came at me in a flood, and I tried to absorb it all. but my brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton. Do I have time? I asked suddenly. To get my affairs in order. To say goodbye? The look on Dr. Morrison's face softened. Ryan, we're not talking about saying goodbye. We're talking about fighting. And yes, you have time. We'll start treatment next week. That gives you a few days to process this, to tell your loved ones, to prepare. But I don't want you thinking this is a death sentence. It's not. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But sitting in that office with those test results staring up at me from her desk, all I could think about was everything I was going to lose. Dr. Morrison gave me some brochures, a prescription for anti-anxiety medication, and the business card of a social worker who specialized in cancer patients. She asked if I had someone I could call, someone who could drive me home. I told her I'd be fine, even though I wasn't fine at all. I walked out of that office in a daze. The waiting room looked different now. The people sitting there looked different. The young woman holding her mother's hand. The elderly man with the cane. We were all part of the same terrible club now, united by 3 little words. You have cancer. I made it to my car before I completely broke down. I sat in the parking lot of the medical building, rain streaming down the windshield, and I sobbed. Deep, ugly, chest-heaving sobs. All the emotions I'd been holding back in Dr. Morrison's office came flooding out. The fear, the anger, the disbelief, the grief for the life I thought I was going to have. I don't know how long I cried. Long enough that the rain stopped and started again. Long enough that the parking lot emptied and filled with new cars. Finally, I pulled out my phone. I had to tell someone. I couldn't carry this alone. I called my mother first. She lived in Seattle, 3 hours north. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. Ryan! Honey, how are you? Did you have your appointment today? Her voice was so cheerful, so normal. In 3 seconds, I was about to destroy that normalcy. Mom, I said, and my voice broke on that one word. Ryan, what's wrong? What happened? Mom, The doctor, she said. I couldn't get the words out. They were stuck in my throat like shards of glass. Ryan, you're scaring me. What did the doctor say? I took a shaking breath. I have cancer, Mom, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Stage 3. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could hear my mother trying to process what I'd just said, trying to find words. No, she finally whispered. No, that can't be right. You're young. You're healthy. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, I said, tears streaming down my face again. I have cancer. My mother started crying then, and hearing her cry made everything so much more real. My mom was the strongest person I knew. She'd raised me and my sister alone after Dad left. She'd worked 2 jobs to put us through school. She'd never let me see her break. But she was breaking now, and it was because of me. I'm coming down, she said through her tears. I'm getting in the car right now. I'll be there in 3 hours. Mom, you don't have to. I'm coming, Ryan. You're not going through this alone. Do you hear me? You are not alone. I drove home on autopilot. I don't remember the route I took or any of the streets I passed. I just remember pulling into my apartment building's parking garage and sitting there, staring at the concrete wall in front of me. Cancer. I have cancer. The words kept repeating in my head like a broken record. No matter how many times I heard them, they didn't seem real. Bailey greeted me at the door with his usual enthusiasm, tail wagging, whole body wiggling with joy. He didn't know that everything had changed. To him, I was just his person coming home, like I did every day. I knelt down and hugged him, burying my face in his fur, and cried again. I'm sick, boy, I whispered. I'm really sick. Bailey licked my face and wagged his tail harder as if to say, it doesn't matter. I love you anyway, I called my sister next. Emma was 2 years younger than me, living in Denver with her husband and their newborn baby. I'd been planning to visit them next month for Thanksgiving. Now I didn't know if I'd be able to travel. I didn't know if I'd even be alive for Thanksgiving. That thought hit me like a punch to the gut. Emma answered on the first ring. Hey, big brother. What's up? I told her. I got the words out faster this time, but they didn't hurt any less. Her reaction was similar to Mom's. Disbelief, tears, shock. She offered to fly out immediately. I told her to wait, that Mom was already coming, that I needed a few days to figure things out. But what I really needed was time to figure out how to be the person I was before 2:30 p.m. that afternoon. And I was starting to realize that person was gone forever. Part 9. The questions that kept me awake. That night was the longest of my life. Mom arrived around 7 p.m. and just seeing her face made me feel like a child again, scared and small and desperate for someone to tell me everything would be okay. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and she didn't let go for a long time. We sat on my couch, Bailey between us, and talked for hours. She asked me questions about the treatment, the prognosis, what the doctor had said. I answered as best I could, but so much of it was still a blur. She promised she'd come with me to my next appointment, that she'd help me understand everything, that she'd be there every step of the way. "You're going to beat this," she said fiercely. "You're my son. You're a fighter. You're going to beat this." I wanted to believe her. But lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop the questions from coming. What if the treatment doesn't work? What if I'm in the percentage that doesn't survive? What will happen to Bailey? Will I lose my hair? Will I be able to work? How will I pay for all this? Will my friends still want to be around me? Will I ever fall in love, get married, have kids? What if this is it? What if I never get to do all the things I planned? The questions spiraled in my head, each one darker than the last. I felt like I was drowning in them, gasping for air but only finding more fear. Around 3 a.m. I got out of bed and stood by the window looking out at the city lights. Portland looked the same as it always did. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets gleaming under the streetlights. Somewhere out there, people were living their normal lives, unaware that mine had just fallen apart. And then, in that dark moment, something shifted. I thought about Dr. Morrison's words. "Now we fight." I thought about my mother, dropping everything to drive 3 hours in the rain to be with me. I thought about my sister, offering to fly across the country with a newborn baby because her brother needed her. I thought about Bailey, who didn't care if I had cancer or not, who loved me unconditionally. I wasn't alone. Even in the darkest moment of my life, I wasn't alone, and maybe that was enough to start with. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified and broken and angry at the universe. But somewhere beneath all that fear and pain, there was something else. Something small but persistent. Something that whispered, "You're still here. You're still breathing. You still have a choice." I could give up before I'd even started fighting. Or I could take it one day at a time, one treatment at a time, one moment at a time. I thought about the motivational poster in Dr. Morrison's waiting room. Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you thought you couldn't. Maybe I couldn't do this, but maybe I could try. The day my doctor said, "You have cancer," was the worst day of my life. It was the day my world ended. But standing there at 3 a.m., looking out at the city that had no idea my life had changed, I realized something else. It was also the day a different life began, a life I never wanted, a life I never chose, a life filled with challenges I never imagined I'd have to face, but it was my life. And I was still here to live it. Epilogue. The morning after, when the sun rose on October 13th, I was still afraid. I was still angry. I was still in shock. But I was also still here. Mom made me breakfast. Scrambled eggs and toast, like she used to when I was a kid. We sat at my small kitchen table, Bailey at our feet, and we made a plan. She'd stay with me for the next few weeks. We'd go to my next appointment together. We'd take it step by step. "One day at a time," she said, squeezing my hand. "We'll get through this one day at a time." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The journey ahead was terrifying. I knew there would be pain, struggle, doubt. I knew there would be days when I wanted to give up. Days when the fear would be overwhelming. But that morning, with my mother beside me and my dog at my feet and the sun streaming through the window, I made a choice. I chose to fight. This is Ryan's story, the story of October 12th, the day that changed everything. At 34 years old, Ryan Jackson thought he had his whole life figured out. A career he loved, a cozy apartment in Portland, and his loyal dog Bailey by his side. But in a single moment, in a small consultation room at Oregon Health and Science University, 3 words shattered his entire world. "You have cancer." In this deeply emotional 30-minute journey, experience the raw, unfiltered reality of hearing a cancer diagnosis for the first time. Feel every emotion, the shock that steals your breath, the denial that clouds your mind, the anger that burns through your chest, and the fear that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., wondering if you'll see another sunrise. This isn't a story about statistics or medical procedures. This is a story about what happens in your heart when everything you thought was certain suddenly isn't. It's about the phone calls you never wanted to make, the tears you can't control, the questions that haunt you in the darkness, and the tiny fragile spark of hope that somehow survives even the worst news. Through Ryan's eyes, walk down that endless hallway to the doctor's office. Sit in that chair when the world tilts. Feel the weight of those words, stage 3, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Experience the emotional roller coaster that follows, from complete devastation to the quiet decision to fight, one day at a time. Whether you're facing your own battle, supporting a loved one, or simply seeking to understand the cancer journey, this story will touch your heart and remind you of the incredible strength we all carry within us, even when we feel completely broken. This video contains real emotions and raw vulnerability, the psychological impact of a cancer diagnosis, family bonds tested and strengthened, the choice between giving up and fighting, a message of hope in the darkest moment. If this story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of courage, survival, and hope.